Okay, Lily, would you like me to read some from the Odyssey today? We stopped in the chapter when Odysseus was really struggling, remember? He went through all kinds of issues, so now he's facing the giant in the cave. So I'm going to read to you a few pages today. All right? Ready? The giant in the cave. They awoke to a beautiful, clear dawn and a fine view. Their ships had run aground in a natural harbor, safely away from the wild open sea. Behind the harbor was a stretch of rich grassland with luxuriant woods beyond. The place seemed to have everything they needed. Huge bunches of grapes grew on wild vines, and a spring of fresh water ran down into the harbor. Mm. Looking up at the wooded hills, Odysseus saw a herd of wild goats leaping from rock to rock. Sorry. The gods must have brought us here, he said. He and his men took their bows and spears and went off to hunt the goats. In a very short time, they had enough to eat for days, and they discovered that the island was inhabited. At last, it was safe to rest and relax. They feasted on roasted meat, washed down with wine they looted from the cyclones. Afterward, they laid on the beach, gazing across to the mainland. They heard the sound of voices drifting over the water and the bleating sheep and goats. Look, this is an image of Odysseus over there, and this is one of the goats. And I guess that's all the nice forest that was there on the beach that they found. They think that they finally are catching a break, but maybe not. Let's continue. And they saw smoke rising into the evening sky from fires like theirs. Idly, as the sun went down, they wondered what kind of people lived over there. They peered across at the dark shore, but no human figures were visible, and hard they tried, they couldn't make out what the voices were saying. Still listening, the sailors fell asleep, one by one beside the embers of the fires. Only Odysseus stayed awake, looking across the water. As the sky grew black and the stars came out, he stared at the glimmering light of the distant fires. What was over there? Whose voices could he hear? As soon as the sun rose, Odysseus was on his feet, giving orders to his men as they awoke. 11 ships must stay here to take on food and fresh water, he said. But I'll take my own ship over to the mainland to see what sort of people live there. He signaled to his crew, and they followed him into the water, clambering on board their ships. They took up their oars. It wasn't worth racing to sail, so they rowed the short distance to the opposite shore. Look, that's Odysseus living on his little ship because he was just going a short distance. Because they were rowing, they were facing backward. It was only when they turned the ship, ready to anchor, that they had their first close look at the place where they were going to land. It was a strange, unsettling sight. A little way back from the shore, they saw the entrance to a vast cave, shadowed by laurel bushes. In front of the cave was a huge sheep pen, made of great blocks of rough cut stone. Every block was taller than a man. What kind of creature could build like that? The sailors glanced nervously at one another, and someone muttered that they ought to row straight back into the island. But Odysseus was curious. He bit his lip thoughtfully, making a plan. Most of you must stay and guard the ship, he said. I'll take 12 men with me to explore the cave. He chose 12 of the best and bravest and ordered them to pack up and some food. Then he filled a big wineskin with rich, strong wine and jumped into the water to wade ashore. He and his 12 companions crept up the beach toward the towering ship pen. Peering through a crack in the wall, they saw what it was full of lambs, but there was no adult sheep. Odysseus guessed that the main flock was up in the high pastures with their shepherd, whoever he was, whatever he was. That gave them a chance to explore the cave. Odysseus crept cautiously up to the entrance, beckoning his men to follow. With their eyes adjusted to the darkness inside, they saw an amazing sight. The cave was very high and deep. It was it was full of gigantic baskets and bowls. The baskets were filled with cheeses the size of cartwheels, and bowls were brimming with milk and whey. Look at all this food! Cried one of the sailors. There are enough cheeses and lambs to last us for all the way back to Ithaca. We don't need to come as looters, Odysseus said. I brought gifts to the owner of this cave. He'll give us gifts in return, out of politeness, and then we'll have all the meat and cheese we need. And we have made a new friend, not an enemy. His men were still nervous, but he persuaded them to stay, taking dry wood from a stack at the back of the cave. They built themselves a fire and settled down to wait for the owner to return. They heard him before they saw him. Tut, 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 tut. His footsteps shook the ground ahead of him. In 3 strides, he had reached the cave and he was driving his ship inside. A huge bundle of firewood flew in after them. And then came a giant himself. His massive body blocked out the light as he stopped to walk through the entrance. Look, this is a picture of the cave. That's Odysseus and his men walking in and seeing all the awesome treasures. Do you see everything that is down here? Creepy, right? Let's find out what happened to those people. What's over there? Oh, look, and some insects. That's the faces of all of Odysseus' men and himself as they saw a big giant figure at the entrance of the cave. Let's see what happened. When Odysseus and his men saw the vast dark shape, they rushed to the back of the cave to hide in the shadows. By the time they turned around to take another look, the monster was blocking the entrance of the cave with a great slab of stone. They were trapped! Shivering in their corner, they watched him sniff in the dying embers of the fire. His massive head turned left and right, peering around. Then he heaped more wood into the fire. The flames shot up, and they saw his face for the first time. He was broad and ugly, with a jutty nose and a thick, heavy jaw. In the center of his forehead was a single, hideous eye, his only one. They were trapped in the cave of a cyclops. You see? Huge monsters with only one eye, they are called cyclops in Greek mythology. Although you probably already knew that because you're awesome. Let's continue. The monster milked his sheep, guzzling down to the first bucketful of single gulp. He set the rest of the milk aside to curdle for making cheese, and then he built up the fire again, piling the wood so high that the red glare lit up the cave. This time he looked around more carefully, searching for intruders. When he saw Odysseus and his men, he bellowed, "Ship stealers!" "We're not thieves," Odysseus said, stepping forward boldly. "We are Greek soldiers, sailing home from the war in Troy." The Cyclops peered suspiciously at him. "Sailing? Where's your ship, then?" Odysseus certainly wasn't going to tell him that. He made a sad face and gazed up at the giant. "Our ship was wrecked," he said. "Poseidon, the earth shaker, whipped up a great storm and swamped it, and we are the only men who didn't drown. Please give us food and shelter." What a coward. The Cyclops laughed scornfully. Instead of answering, he reached out and grabbed two of Odysseus' men. Cramming them into his mouth, he gulped them down, grinning as the other sailors shouting in horror. "Ah!" Then he guzzled another bucketful of milk and sprawled on the floor, falling asleep immediately. His body was like a mountain, filling half of the cave. As soon as he began to snore, Odysseus darted forward, ready to draw his sword. And that's where I'm going to stop today, because it's a long chapter actually. Mija, if you would like me to keep reading through you this week on video, let me know and I can dedicate some minutes. If you don't, then I hope you're having a lot of fun and send me a little message. I love you. I miss you. Good night. Bye.